What kind of man drives a woman 7 months pregnant into the middle of the Utah desert, tells her to use the restroom, and then vanishes without a trace? What kind of man sends a text message, no explanation, no warning, just 6 cold words? We're done. Take care of yourself? And what kind of woman survives it? The desert highway stretched endlessly into the night, a black ribbon slicing through the red rock silence of Utah's wilderness. No streetlights, no traffic, only the hum of tires on asphalt and the occasional whisper of wind brushing the cliffs. Inside a sleek matte black luxury car, Elena Myers shifted in her seat, wincing as a cramp pulled tight across her lower back. 7 months pregnant. 7 months into what should have been the most beautiful chapter of her life. But nothing about this felt beautiful anymore. Beside her, Brandon sat with one hand on the wheel and the other casually flipping through radio stations, never landing on one for more than a few seconds. He hadn't spoken in nearly 2 hours. Not since they'd left their mountain cabin in Colorado. Not since that cold silence wrapped itself around them like a warning neither of them dared to name. "Brandon," Elena said gently, her voice almost too soft for the humming car to catch, "I need to stop soon. My back's killing me and I haven't used the restroom since lunch." He didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched. His eyes never left the road. "Elena," he muttered, as if the sound of her name tasted bitter. "Can't it wait?" She hesitated. "Not really, please." Without a word, he swerved toward the next exit, a weathered green sign barely lit by the car's headlights. Next services. 1 mile. He didn't look at her, didn't ask how she was feeling. Just took the turn like he was making a business decision. Efficient, detached. They pulled into a small, nearly deserted gas station, the kind you'd only find in the middle of nowhere. One flickering overhead light, a rusted ice machine, and a single vending machine buzzing faintly near the entrance. The convenience store itself was closed, its windows dark. But the restroom. Sign glowed in tired neon along the side. "I'll be quick," Elena offered, one hand on the door handle, the other bracing her stomach. Brandon didn't reply. His hands stayed on the wheel, his knuckles white. As she stepped out of the car, the desert air slapped her skin with a sudden chill. She pulled her cardigan tighter, shuffling toward the restroom, her ankles swollen and her mind spinning. Something felt wrong. She could feel it in her bones. Inside the restroom, she exhaled slowly, steadying herself against the sink. The mirror was cracked. The overhead light buzzed like a warning. She washed her hands, splashed cold water on her face, and stared at her reflection. "You're almost there," she whispered to herself. "Just a little longer." She dried her hands on her jeans and opened the door, stepping back out into the quiet, empty lot, and froze. The car was gone. Her breath caught. She looked around wildly, stepping forward into the open lot. There was no sound but the wind and the faint rattle of the ice machine. No headlights, no engine purr in the distance. Just nothing. Her chest tightened. "Brandon?" she called, her voice cracking. No answer. She fumbled for her phone with trembling hands. It took her 3 tries to unlock it. 1 missed call. A text from Brandon. Her heart dropped as she tapped the notification. "We're done. Take care of yourself." Elena stared. The words didn't make sense. They weren't real. They couldn't be. "No," she whispered. No. What? Her phone buzzed again. Another message. This one from an unknown number. A photo. Brandon. Shirt unbuttoned. Holding a cocktail. Standing beside a woman Elena recognized all too well. Vanessa Lee. The same Vanessa who used to show up at their parties laughing too loudly. The same Vanessa Brandon once insisted was just a friend. They were at a beach resort. Malibu. Toasting. Smiling. Elena's knees gave out and she stumbled backward onto the cold pavement. He had planned this. He had driven her into the middle of nowhere just to abandon her like trash. A car horn blared in the distance, not coming toward her, just a reminder of how empty the road was. The gas station lights flickered again. Her breathing turned shallow. Panic rising, she reached for her bag, only to remember. He'd kept it in the car. Her wallet, her ID, her credit cards. Gone. The restroom was locked now, its door shut with a heavy click from the inside. The station was closed. There was no one. No one at all. The cold crept in like a slow wave. Then came the rain. Light at first, then heavier, sheets of it. Unforgiving. Elena pulled her cardigan around her belly and staggered toward the side of the building, her body already beginning to tremble. And then the first contraction hit. Sharp. Deep. Unmistakable. She gasped, one hand clutching her stomach, the other reaching for the wall to steady herself. "Not now," she whimpered. "Please, not now." Another wave. Stronger. She dropped to her knees on the wet concrete, pain racking her spine. She was 7 months pregnant. It was too soon. Too early. She wasn't ready, and she was alone. Tears streamed down her face, mixing with rainwater. She looked out at the road, praying for headlights, for a miracle, for something, anything. And then far away, a pair of headlights pierced through the misty dark. A truck, old, sturdy, slowing down. Elena couldn't even raise her hand to wave. Her strength was fading too fast, her body shaking. Another contraction slammed through her like a tidal wave. The truck stopped. The engine cut off. A man stepped out, tall, worn boots, a dark jacket, an umbrella in one hand, a look of alarm spreading across his face as he spotted her. "Miss?" he called, moving quickly. "Are you okay?" Elena opened her mouth, but no sound came. The pain was too much. Her body collapsed forward, but before she hit the ground, strong arms caught her. Warm, steady hands wrapped around her trembling frame. "I've got you," the stranger said, his voice low and firm. "You're okay. I've got you." She felt the rush of movement as he carried her. The car door opening, the scent of leather and something faintly minty. He laid her gently in the back seat. As the truck sped off into the night, Elena's vision blurred. The pain pulsed, but for the first time in hours she wasn't alone. And right before everything faded to black, she heard him again whispering with steady calm, "Stay with me, okay? Just stay with me." The beeping was the first thing Elena heard when she came to. Steady, soft, a metronome counting her back into consciousness. Then came the smells. Antiseptic, faint lavender, something warm like clean linen. Her eyes fluttered, open, the fluorescent hospital ceiling swimming into view. It took a second for her to remember why she was there. The pain, the rain, the empty road. Brandon. Her hand flew to her belly. Before she could panic further, a gentle voice cut through the haze. "Your baby's okay." She turned her head slowly. Sitting beside her bed was a man, tall, lean, dressed in a dark green flannel shirt rolled to the elbows. His hands were strong but calm in their stillness, resting on his knees. A dusting of stubble lined his jaw, and worry flickered behind his deep-set eyes. "You were dehydrated," he added. "Exhausted. But you and your baby are both stable. Now." Elena blinked, her throat dry. Where am I?" "Red Canyon General," he said. "Closest hospital for 50 miles. Then, like an afterthought, he added, "I'm Camden. Camden Hart." The name meant nothing to her, but the warmth in his voice settled something shaky in her chest. "You found me," she murmured. He nodded. "You were slumped outside the gas station, in the rain. I thought you'd passed out. I almost did," she whispered. "I think I was." She swallowed hard, her eyes scanning the room for something familiar. Anything that belonged to her. But there was nothing. No bag, no phone, no clothes other than the thin hospital gown. "Do you have my phone?" she asked. Camden hesitated. "The nurse has it. I didn't look through it, I swear. But your ID was missing." Her heart sank. Of course it was. Brandon had made sure of that. No wallet, no credit cards, no ID. No way to prove who she was, not even to herself. "They ran your name off the hospital intake," Camden continued carefully. "Elena Myers. That's you?" She nodded weakly. He hesitated again. "You didn't have an emergency contact. The hospital couldn't reach anyone." Elena closed her eyes. That ache behind her ribs swelled again, not physical but sharp, and emotional. She couldn't even tell them who to call, because there was no one left to call. "Do you want to tell me what happened?" Camden asked quietly. "You don't have to. But if you do..." Her voice came out raw. "He left me." Camden waited. "My husband. Brandon. We were driving through the desert and I asked him to stop so I could use the bathroom. I came back and he was gone." Camden's jaw flexed, but he said nothing. She looked away. "He sent me a text, said we were done, and then he sent a photo." Her breath caught again. He was at a resort with another woman. This time Camden exhaled. slow and deep, not judgmental, not pitying, but unmistakably angry. He left you, he repeated like he couldn't believe the words. 7 months pregnant, alone, in the desert. She nodded. Silence filled the space between them, heavy but not unbearable. For a while Camden didn't speak, just sat beside her, his eyes distant, as if trying to puzzle together a version of humanity that would allow for something so cruel. Finally he said, "You don't have to go back." Her brows furrowed. "What?" "When they discharge you. If you don't have anywhere to go, I have a guest room at my place. It's nothing fancy, but it's safe and warm, and yours for as long as you need." Elena stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to," he replied. "You don't leave someone where I found you. You just don't." She blinked fast, trying to push back the tears threatening her already sore eyes. Camden stood slowly. "I'll step out. Let the nurse know you're awake. You can think about it." "Wait," she said, her voice barely audible. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Camden paused at the door. His voice was quiet even. "Because someone once did it for me." And then he was gone. The discharge came the next afternoon. Elena's body still ached, but the contractions had stopped. False labor, they told her. A stress response. Her baby's heartbeat was strong, but the doctor had warned her. Another episode like that could end very differently. She didn't have many options. No money, no home, no family. So she nodded when Camden offered to drive her home. His home. They didn't speak much on the way, but the silence wasn't heavy this time. It was thoughtful, almost kind. His house sat on the edge of a quiet residential street nestled against the red cliffs of Kanab, Utah. It was small but cozy, wrapped in warm cedar siding and surrounded by desert wildflowers. There was a porch swing, a wind chime, and a rocking chair. It felt like the kind of place that had weathered storms and still chosen peace. Camden helped her inside without fuss. No dramatics. Just careful hands guiding her to a soft armchair. In a living room that smelled faintly of cinnamon and old books. He'd set up the guest room already. Fresh sheets, a small fan, a bottle of lotion on the nightstand. "You didn't have to," she started. "I wanted to," he said simply. That night, Elena didn't sleep much. Her body still trembled. Her mind replayed every moment. The silence in the car, the click of the bathroom door shutting behind her, the spot where the car had been. She curled on her side and whispered to the baby in her belly. "I'm sorry, I should have seen it coming." But she hadn't. Because hope makes us blind to cruelty sometimes, especially when we love the wrong person too deeply. Over the next few days, something unexpected began to bloom. Not romance. Not yet, but a rhythm. Camden left her space, but not too much. He made her tea in the mornings, set a timer to remind her to hydrate, put a box of prenatal vitamins on the kitchen counter. One afternoon, he handed her a sketchbook and said, "I noticed you always stare at that mural near the clinic. Thought maybe you'd want to draw again." She hadn't drawn in years. Not since she gave up her freelance design business to follow Brandon's tech dreams. But her fingers itched when she picked up the pencil. The page stayed blank that day. But the next, she sketched a single leaf. The next, a sun, then a mountain. Little by little, her voice came back. Not in words, but in lines and shading. Camden never commented, never praised. Just nodded, left snacks on her desk, and made sure she had space to feel like a person again. And every night, when she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she realized she no longer felt like she was falling. She was standing still, and sometimes stillness was the first miracle after surviving a storm. The days passed in quiet, steady beats, a rhythm that was soft but unmistakably healing. Elena woke each morning to the scent of fresh brewed coffee and the sound of birdsong, drifting in from the porch. Camden never knocked on her door too early. He left breakfast on the kitchen island, oatmeal, fruit, a note that read, "Checkups at 3 p.m. Don't forget water." There was no pressure to talk, no obligation to share, and yet Elena found herself doing it anyway. Not all at once, but in pieces. Like the morning she shuffled into the living room, hair messy from sleep, holding her sketch pad with a hesitant kind of pride. "I drew something," she said quietly. Camden looked up from his worn medical journal and gave her his full attention. "Can I see?" She flipped the pad toward him, revealing a delicate pencil drawing of a woman holding a child against a skyline of jagged cliffs and desert light. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice low. "It's me," she admitted. "Or, it's who I want to be." He didn't smile. He didn't praise her like a child. He just nodded with understanding. "You already are." That afternoon, she asked if he'd help her set up an Etsy account. Her old one had been abandoned, locked behind an email Brandon once managed. So they started from scratch. A new name, a new portfolio. Elena Ray Design. Soft, personal, distinctly hers. Within days, the orders trickled in. Not many, but enough. Enough to remind her that she still had value. That her hands, her mind, her voice still mattered. Camden helped her ship the first batch. Drove her to the post office, stood beside her in the line. "You're not just surviving anymore," he said as they left. "You're building something." She didn't reply right away, but her chest felt less heavy. Meanwhile, in Malibu, the sun was shining bright on the surface, but beneath it, Brandon Myers was starting to drown. The video hit social media like a wildfire, a grainy security camera clip. A woman, visibly pregnant, stepping out of a black car at a remote gas station. Minutes later, the car pulling away without her. She looked confused, then devastated, then utterly alone. Someone had leaked the footage. Someone who knew exactly who she was and who he was. It spread fast, faster than his PR team could clean it up. Justice for Elena began trending by noon. By dinner time, Sterling Myers Technologies had lost over 12% in stock value. By the end of the week, 2 major investors pulled out. Vanessa, ever the opportunist, watched the chaos from a lounge chair by the resort pool. Her drink barely touched. "You said this would blow over," she remarked flatly as Brandon paced their suite, phone glued to his ear. "It will," he snapped, tugging at his collar. "This is temporary. I'll issue a statement." "Don't bother," she replied, not looking up. "You didn't just leave your pregnant wife. You ditched her in the middle of the desert. With nothing. You've officially become the internet's favorite villain." Brandon turned to her, eyes wild. "Are you serious right now?" "I'm serious about not sinking with your ship," she said, standing and smoothing her dress. "Thanks for the beachfront, though." She was gone before he could answer. He stared at the open doorway, the empty glass she left behind, and realized for the first time he wasn't just losing his reputation. He was losing everything. Back in Utah, the desert wind had begun to cool. Autumn was teasing the edges of the landscape, and Elena had found her own quiet joy in the change of seasons. One morning, she stood on the porch wrapped in a cardigan Camden had left folded for her. The baby kicked gently beneath her ribs. "You're a fighter," she whispered, resting her hand on her belly. "I guess we both are." Camden joined her minutes later with 2 mugs of tea. She looked at him, suddenly overwhelmed by a question that had been tugging at her since their first meeting. "What made you stop that night?" she asked. He didn't pretend not to understand. "I lost my wife 4 years ago," he said. "Complications during labor. She didn't make it. Our son didn't either." Elena's throat tightened. "I was driving home from a night shift. When I saw you," he continued, eyes still fixed on the horizon. "I don't know. Something in me just knew I couldn't keep going." "I'm so sorry," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "Don't be. I stopped living for a while. After that, thought I'd never want to feel anything again. But then there you were, crying in the rain, and for the first time in years I wanted to help someone again." She reached for his hand instinctively. He didn't flinch. They stood like that, for a while. Hands entwined, hearts bruised but no longer broken in the same places. That evening, Elena pulled out a canvas. Not her sketchpad, not a notebook, a real canvas. She painted until her fingers ached, until her arms trembled, until the baby fell asleep in her belly and the world felt quiet. It was a portrait of a woman standing in the rain, soaked, afraid but unbowed, and in the distance a truck, headlights cutting through the dark, a stranger reaching out a hand. She titled it, "Found." In Malibu, Brandon's house sat empty. His lawyer had quit. His investors refused to return calls. His inbox overflowed with refund requests, cancellation, notices, and one final message from his former board of directors. "You are no longer the face of this company. Effective immediately." And the worst part? Elena hadn't lifted a single finger to do it. She hadn't posted anything. She hadn't gone to the media. She hadn't said a word. He had destroyed himself, and now all he could do was watch her rise without him. The knock came just after sunset. Elena had just finished folding a stack of soft hand-painted baby onesies, her belly now round and heavy, nearly full term. The last light of day filtered through the kitchen window, casting long golden shadows across the wood floor. She paused, her fingers tightening around a folded sleeve. Camden wasn't due back until later. He was helping a neighbor patch a roof before the cold weather arrived. No one else ever came by without calling first. The second knock was louder, heavier, familiar. A sensation prickled at the base of her neck, a cold awareness. She walked slowly to the front door, her feet silent against the floor. When she opened it, she knew. Brandon stood there. His once pristine appearance was gone. His designer jacket was wrinkled, his eyes sunken, his hair disheveled in a way that wasn't careless. It was desperation, writ across every inch of him. "Elena," he said, voice hoarse. "Please, don't shut the door." She didn't. Not yet. She didn't speak either. Brandon swallowed hard. I didn't know where else to go." She tilted her head, her voice cold and clean as steel. "Not Malibu?" His eyes flinched. "Vanessa's gone. She took everything. The company, the house, the press destroyed me." Elena nodded once. "So you came to me?" "Not because I lost everything," he said quickly. "Because I realized what mattered. You, us. I was wrong, Elena, so wrong. I panicked. I thought you didn't love me anymore. I thought you thought I was weak," she cut in sharply. Brandon fell silent. "You thought I'd fall apart if you left me in the middle of nowhere. That I'd come crawling back, begging, helpless." Her voice didn't rise, but every word landed like thunder. "But I didn't fall apart," she continued. "I found strength where you tried to leave emptiness. I didn't crawl. I stood. And I didn't beg. I built." His eyes dropped to her belly. "Is the baby okay?" She placed a hand protectively across her stomach. "She's strong. Probably stronger than I was when you walked away from us." A flicker of shame crossed his face. "Elena," he whispered, "I need to make this right. I need to be here for her, for you." She looked at him for a long, quiet moment. There had been a time when those words, or even the shadow of them, would have unmade her. She had waited so long to hear him say something like this. But now they meant nothing, because she was no longer waiting. "You're not here because you love us," she said. "You're here because you have nothing left." He opened his mouth, but she stepped forward, cutting him off. "I spent years shrinking myself to fit your life. I gave up my career, my city, my identity. I made myself small so you could feel big, and you still left me." She was trembling now, but not from fear, from release. "You don't get to come back just because you missed the version of me you could control. That woman is gone. Elena, please." He stepped forward. She stepped back, and then calmly, without anger, she said the words that would end it all. "I forgive you, but I don't want you in my life. Not mine. Not hers. Not anymore." And she shut the door. She stood there for a long time, forehead against the cool wood, heart racing. Not from regret, but from clarity. On the other side of that door was the man who once held her world in his hands. But in here, inside this home she had helped make, was the life she had rebuilt. The silence didn't last long. Behind her, Camden entered from the back porch. He had returned just in time to hear the last few words. He didn't speak, he didn't need to. He simply stepped beside her and waited. "You heard that?" she asked, her voice still steady. "I did. Do you think I was too harsh?" He looked at her, really looked. And when he answered, his voice was full of something fierce and honest. "No, I think you were exactly who you needed to be." She didn't cry. Not this time. The pain had already had its season. What remained now was peace, and peace, she had learned, was far more powerful than closure. That night she painted again. A portrait of a woman standing on a porch in twilight, her hand on her belly, a closed door behind her, and a wide open world ahead. She titled it, "The Last Goodbye." The hospital room was dim and quiet, lit only by the soft amber glow of a lamp in the corner. Rain tapped gently against the window pane, a steady rhythm that had followed them since the early morning drive. It was almost poetic, Elena thought. The same sound that once filled her ears the night she was left behind, now cradling her through the beginning of something entirely new. She lay in the hospital bed, her body aching in places she hadn't known could hurt, her breathing shallow but even. In her arms was her daughter. Wrapped in a pink and cream knit blanket, her tiny features still scrunched from the effort of birth, the baby let out a soft whimper before nestling into Elena's chest. "She's perfect," Camden said quietly, from the chair beside her. His eyes, which Elena had seen clouded by grief once, now shimmered with something else. Awe, gratitude, maybe even something deeper. Elena couldn't speak for a long time. She just stared at her daughter's face. The button nose, the fluttering lashes, the small, perfect mouth. "She made it," she whispered finally. Camden reached over and gently brushed a strand of damp hair from her forehead. "You both did." The weeks that followed unfolded in layers. Exhausting, beautiful, raw. Motherhood was nothing like Elena had imagined in her old life. There were no silk robes or curated nurseries, no filtered Instagram perfection. But there was warmth. There was depth. There were nights of 3, hours of sleep, and mornings with baby coos that melted the hardest parts of her. Camden was there for all of it, not hovering, not assuming, just showing up over and over again. He held the baby while Elena showered, made late-night tea when the baby wouldn't sleep, taped affirmations to the bathroom mirror. "You're stronger than you feel. This will pass. She's lucky to have you." Some nights Elena cried, not from sadness but from the weight of being seen. Loved, not for being easy, but for being real. One evening, as they sat on the back porch wrapped in blankets, the baby asleep in a sling across Elena's chest, Camden turned to her with that steady gaze she had come to trust more than any she'd known. "I know this isn't how life was supposed to go," he said, "but I think it's becoming what it was meant to be." Elena didn't answer right away. She reached into the sling, brushing her daughter's cheek with one finger. "I named her Nova," she said softly. Camden smiled. "A star that's born after an explosion." Exactly. A few months later, Elena launched her own business, Nova and Ren, named for her daughter and the courage she'd reclaimed. It began with a few hand-painted onesies and blankets. But the story behind the designs, a story of survival, of motherhood, of finding light after ruin, traveled faster than any marketing campaign ever could. Women wrote to her, sent photos, shared their own stories. One message read, "You made me feel less alone, like it's okay to start again." Another, "I left my ex 3 weeks ago. Your blog gave me the courage." Elena replied to every message, sometimes with advice, sometimes just with, "You're stronger than you know." And each time she meant it more. Brandon never tried again. He resurfaced in the news once or twice. A failed startup here, a brief podcast appearance there. But the public hadn't forgotten. The betrayal had stained him, not because it was scandalous, but because it was inhuman. Elena never spoke of him to Nova. She didn't need to. Their story wasn't about him. It never had been. On Nova's first birthday, Camden built a swing in the backyard. Elena watched from the porch as he gently fastened the safety harness, testing the ropes twice before lifting Nova into the seat. Her daughter squealed in delight as Camden gave the swing a gentle push, the desert wind catching her curls. "You spoil her," Elena teased. Camden glanced back with a grin. "She's the only boss I take orders from." Elena laughed. And somewhere, deep inside, something softened even more. Later, as they sat in the fading afternoon light, Camden reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. No fanfare, no grand speeches, just a simple velvet square and a ring inside it. "Elena," he said, voice low, "I don't want to save you. I don't want to fix you. I just want to love you, if you'll let me." Elena didn't cry. Not like she thought she might. Instead, she smiled. Wide, whole, certain. "Yes," she whispered, "not because I need to, but because I want to." He slid the ring onto her finger, and when he leaned in to kiss her, Nova giggled from the swing, kicking her feet like she already knew they were hers, all 3 of them together. Their wedding was quiet, held in the backyard under desert stars, a string of lights, a barefoot walk down the garden path, Nova asleep in Elena's arms as vows were exchanged. There were no lavish centerpieces, no socialites in attendance, but there was joy, real, soul deep, joy, and a woman who had once been left behind, now leading the dance. The story of Elena Myers didn't end when she was abandoned. It began the moment she chose not to stay broken. It grew in the quiet kindness of a stranger, in the fierce protectiveness of a mother, in the rebirth of a life she rebuilt with her own 2 hands, and in the soft, steady love that asked for nothing but to walk beside her. She had been forgotten. She had been underestimated. But in the end, she rose. She created a life of her choosing, a home of her building, a love of her deserving, and that was everything. In the end, Elena's story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about rebirth. It was about how the worst moment of your life can become the beginning of something stronger. She was left in the rain, 7 months pregnant, abandoned by the man who once vowed to protect her. But instead of breaking, she rose. She rebuilt herself, not with rage or revenge, but with resilience, dignity, and quiet strength. This story reminds us you are not defined by who left you, but by what you choose to become after. True love isn't loud. It's steady. It's someone who stays when others walk away. And healing isn't always about forgetting. It's about reclaiming your power and learning to trust again, especially in yourself. If Elena could survive the storm and find her light, so can you. What part of this story touched you the most? Let us know in the comments below. If this story inspired you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel. Your support gives us the strength to keep telling stories that heal, uplift, and empower. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story that might just change your heart. Because sometimes the most broken roads lead to the most beautiful destinations.